Close-Up is brought to you by the Kia Sorento R, redefining the power of Kia.
Kia ora, good evening. A beer with Dad or a glass of bubbly at Christmas sounds harmless. A good idea even to get young teens used to alcohol so when they do hit the bottle they don't hit the skids. Or is it normalising booze so they can head out with mates and really get completely plastered? Teenage drinking is a serious problem, but there's little consensus on just how to approach it and try and fix it. In a moment we'll talk to Rebecca Williams of Alcohol Health Watch and Ross Bell from the Drug Foundation. But first, Jill Higgins spoke to two families with very different points of view.
I can have this piece if you really like.
It's just bacon and pie.
The Mullins.
It is a bit spicy.
Okay, come here.
And the Colstons. Two average Kiwi families dealing with the usual teenage troubles. And teen drinking is right up there, bothering them both.
It's so accessible.
Alcohol is cheaper. Their whole focus when they go out to drink is to get drunk.
They'll drink beer, they'll drink wine, but they'll drink RTDs, and the RTDs are so strong.
They taste like lemonade.
I think all parents would probably agree that we want to try and moderate the amount of alcohol that children consume. But I guess it's just we have a difference of opinion as to what the best strategy is for achieving that.
In the Mullins family, it's about easing them in.
It's more about education. It's like the forbidden fruit. If you say no, 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 well, they're always going to wonder. They're going to see their friends and, you know, I think they're more likely to fall by the wayside.
So their first son, Tim, got to drink at home.
When he was sort of 15, perhaps 16, it was important that if he wanted to have a drink with me here at home when we had friends around. And he seemed to embrace that and then moved on to having drinks with his friends, which we didn't necessarily know about.
It didn't put them off. It's the same plan for the other two. Tess at 15, just starting to get a look in.
They kind of let me have a little drink and like a celebration, but not when I go to parties. Yeah.
And that's cool with you?
Yeah, well, sometimes I want to, but...
In an extended family setting or with our friends, if she's had too many, then finds out how she actually feels when she gets a bit tipsy, then, she's in a very safe environment.
As for drinking at parties...
I think in like a year or so, they'll start to gradually let me.
But that simply doesn't add up for the Colston family.
I don't think I want my children to get used to drinking.
I think it's sending a mixed message.
They lump drinking with sex and smoking. Illegal for young teens. To be discussed, but not offered for a tryout.
We don't give them practicals. We don't say, here you are, have a go.
Have a few cigarettes that might help you to be able to control yourself.
They rarely drink at home now, and it's strictly no alcohol at all for the kids.
The bottom line would be, you don't have to drink to have a good time.
But is that realistic? 17-year-old Dom isn't too fussed about drinking, but as for his mates...
When we get together at night, a lot of people do. A lot of people binge.
When my daughter would come home and say everybody else does it, she wasn't lying. We have found from discussions with other parents that we are in a minority by not providing them with alcohol.
How do you feel about that?
I think it makes life very hard for us. Other people's parents have felt sorry for her in a way, so that they've provided it for her. We don't have the excuse that we didn't think it was dangerous. We know that it has long-lasting effects on our children, and that the longer you leave it before you start to drink, the better it is for their health and safety.
It's an issue close to home.
My daughter has been incapacitated with alcohol, and she's been in an incredibly risky situation that had awful consequences. And I know that if I had provided her with any of the alcohol she drank that night, I would have felt awful.
Deciding an approach for your own children is one thing, but with parties, suddenly there's responsibility for your kids' mates. Even the Prime Minister admits it's tough.
As a parent of teenage children, there is enormous pressure to supply alcohol, not just to them, but to others.
The Mullins felt that pressure and coped as best they could.
Because Tim was captain of a few rugby teams where we had the end-of-season parties here, but we had a lot of parents here.
We'd make sure that if that their parents knew that there'd be alcohol, and if they weren't comfortable with it, you know, they were to let us know.
Under the new bill, it could be compulsory to get parental consent.
A text from a parent may not be from a parent. It's incredibly naive to think that you can police that effectively.
So what's the answer? Despite their eldest son taking to drink more than they'd like,
Experiencing life without your parents knowing about it.
the Mullins are sticking to their guns.
So with your oldest boy, would it have worked to just say, no, nothing at all until you're 18?
I think he would have rebelled because he was in a culture where all his friends were drinking.
I think it comes back to moderation.
It's the same for the Colstons. The problems experienced by their eldest daughter has only strengthened their resolve.
I do feel very strongly about it, and I don't think that saying no is that evil. I think that sometimes you just have to say no.
So are you saying that you need a groundswell change of opinion amongst parents?
If, I don't know, if 8 out of 10 parents said, I'm not providing you with alcohol, or you're not going to that party if it's got alcohol, then I think it would make a difference.
OK, so what do you reckon? We are running a text and Facebook poll on this issue tonight. The question is, do you think parents should let their underage teenage drinkers drink alcohol? Text yes or no to 8875, or go to our Facebook page. We'll have the results at the end of the show. Well, joining me now is Rebecca Williams from Alcohol Health Watch, and in our Wellington studio, Ross Bell from the Drug Foundation. Evening to you both. First of all, Ross, if I can start with you, which parents got it right? The letting them have a drink at home, or just putting the hard word on them, saying no booze at all?
The good parents who are putting the hard word are actually following what the evidence says, which is to delay drinking as long as possible. Your first family, though, or the family that is introducing their kids to alcohol, are probably more typical, and to me seem to have a fairly responsible approach to that. So I think kind of the rule is, yeah, you do want to delay. It would be preferable that people under the age of 18 weren't drinking alcohol. But if parents were going to supply their 15, 16, 17-year-olds alcohol, then it should be very few drinks and it should be supervised. Sadly, we see lots of cases where families go to the extreme where they think they're being cool, and they provide large quantities of alcohol to their kids and their kids' friends.
Rebecca, is there, and you're not allowed to use the word silver magical bullet in this next answer, is there a right way of approaching this? Because kids are going to drink booze, whether it's in front of you or behind your back.
No silver bullet, unfortunately. It's a challenge for all parents. We're operating in an environment that's drenched with alcohol. Alcohol marketing, cheap pricing, 24/7 availability. Kids are under enormous pressure from the environment and their peers to drink. As I agree with Ross, the best advice we can offer parents is to delay the drinking amongst your young people for as long as you possibly can. And when you do supply, it is better that you supply it as a parent and you moderate and supervise that consumption. I'm not saying it's easy. So in some ways, the two-parent or the two families are doing the right thing. One of them's taking a slightly stricter approach to it.
Is that not making the problem worse, though, saying, no, you can't drink at home, that it's going to, as they said, make it the forbidden fruit, and they're going to go out and get absolutely hammered with their mates when you're not there to watch it, not there to control them and pick up the pieces?
I'm not so sure it works like that. I actually think that kids will respect boundaries. I actually think that families who talk together talk about the issue rather than just saying no. And they're also modelling good practices themselves, so they're consistent when they're saying no. So they might not drink every night. They might not drink up large when they do drink. So they're not demonstrating to their kids that you know, having a good time is dependent on being sloshed or boozed. So I think there's a whole mix of things that can come into play, and you know, there's no denying it. The challenges for parents are huge.
Ross, what do you make of what the government's trying to do here? Written or texted consent to supply alcohol at parties between one parent and another sounds sort of like a well-meaning idea, but I mean, is something like that actually going to work when you put teenagers and booze into the mix?
Well, these things do actually work in New South Wales, so we're not trying something new. We're borrowing from the Australians. But I think what it's trying to say is that if we, you know, the only people, and I think it's a good message to start getting out there, the only people that should be supplying alcohol, if it is going to be supplied, is the parents. And if they're going to do that, then they should supervise that. I think too often we have these cases where people think we need to be cool adults and supply large quantities of alcohol to kids, and those kids might not be our own. So I think if we started getting the message out there that if we're going to give minors alcohol, it should be only the parents or Rebecca, other adults with permission under controlled situations.
Rebecca, things have changed here. Unlike the old days where you had to ring up and talk to your mates or whatever, you don't now. Kids can text, kids can Facebook. The sort of gatekeeper role, if you like, of parents is gone. Are we dreaming to think that can be in some way reinstated?
I don't know. I think it will take some serious responses. It'll take some policy responses by government to improve the overall environment out there and take away some of that pressure to drink. I think also just in relation to the proposed legislation, not only are parents identified as the only legal suppliers of alcohol unless you have consent from the parents, what goes with that, with any supply in the new legislation, it has to be done in a responsible manner. So I think that the proposed law is sending quite a strong message, actually, and I think it's time for parents and communities as a whole to catch up with that and acknowledge it, and for the government to step in and do some of the supportive strategies around that.
Super quickly, just finally, as a parent with a teenage daughter, horrendous numbers out today on New Zealand girls drinking. They're getting worse than the boys.
Unfortunately, data talked about at our symposium this afternoon. 28% of 16 to 17-year-old young women are drinking 8+ drinks when they consume alcohol. This is an increase from 9% of that population back in 1995. So the increase is significant, the amounts are significant. We're looking at quite serious consequences from that kind of consumption. And that's why I think the conversation we're having tonight is really, really important. Right. We've all got to work together. Families, communities, governments, local governments. It's time for us all to work together closely.
Going to have to leave it there. Rebecca Williams and Wellington Ross Bell, thank you very much to you both. Well, the text and Facebook poll is open. Let remind you the question is, do you think parents should let their underage teenagers drink alcohol? Text yes or no to 8875. If you want to tell us your views, you know what to do. There's the website, or you can email us at closeup@tvnz.co.nz, and we're on Facebook. You can vote or post your views. Facebook.com/closeup.